On today's show, we are interviewing John Rampton. Who's John Rampton? Well, our guest, John Rampton, was recently named as number 2 on the top 50 online influencers in the world by Entrepreneur Magazine. Again, John Rampton was named as number 2 on the top 50 online influencers list by Entrepreneur Magazine. And on today's show, he encourages you to track and measure what you treasure. He encourages you to track both your profits and your revenue, as opposed to obsessing about how many likes and followers you're gaining on social media. On today's show, John Rampton also shares how he's made a fortune by buying and selling domains. He's been featured in TechCrunch, The Huffington Post, Forbes, and countless media outlets. And now, without any further ado, our interview with John Rampton, direct to you.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top. Teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colin Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of 5, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the CNC up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, we are interviewing a top online influencer and entrepreneur by the name of John Rampton. Today's guest, he was named as number 2 on the top 50 online influencers in the world, Z, by Entrepreneur Magazine.
Wow.
He's been as a guest expert on Forbes, as a guest blogger, and he currently invests and advises several companies in the Bay Area, all the way from San Francisco-ish. It is John Rampton. Welcome onto the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing super well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Do you have strong opinions about the San Francisco Giants?
No.
Okay.
How about the 49ers?
You
49ers?
know, my wife is a Seahawk.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, I know. It's hard.
Happy wife, happy life.
I love the 49ers. I think they're doing great.
So you wear a lot of seafoam green around the house then, right? Is that what you do? And kind of,
yeah, she dresses up our dog.
Oh, wow. Hey, by the way, that run that Marshawn Lynch did, he came in, he's only been back for 2 games.
2 games.
That run, that 5-yard run, he ran, it seemed like he runs it completely into the opposition, and they stop him. And then he gives that second effort, third effort, maybe the 5th effort. I'm not sure, but he got into the end zone. Did you see that play there, John Rampton?
Yeah, it's beast mode.
Oh, man. Okay.
You can't stop the beast.
Skittles is back.
That's how I feel about you. It's beast mode, John Rampton. So, John, you've had massive success. All of our listeners are Googling you right now to try to figure out who you are. Tell us about, how you started. How did you grow up? Tell us what life was like growing up there.
You know, I grew up in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah area, and life was good. I've always been an entrepreneur. My parents have never really given me money. So I was always kind of forced to, if I wanted to go somewhere or do something, I had to pay for it myself. So, from a very young age, I had that entrepreneurial thing. I had a little candy stand that I opened up. I rented a person's garage across the street from the elementary school and brought out the table and all my snacks, and that's how I live.
That's awesome.
So what was your first real business after the candy stand? And I'm not disrespecting the candy stand. I know that was a real business. I'm sure you had an LLC, employees, workflows, systems, processes. I get it.
I actually, sadly, I did have an employee. I set up 2 more candy stands around that elementary, front and back, and I ended up selling that business for a little less than $4,000.
Come on now.
How old were you when you sold this thing?
Like 13, maybe 14.
So what was your next viable business? What was the next one where you had the next big win?
Over the years, I had a bunch of big wins. Like I got into domains very, very early. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you guys have ever read that book, and I was like, oh man, I could totally do this, but I have no money and I can't get a loan. So I'm kind of screwed. So I did my own Rich Dad Poor Dad with domains. And that's kind of how I really got started, making money in the online world was from a domain perspective. I would buy domains and I knew I could sell them for more than I bought them for. And if I bought good domains, I could sell them. And, again, entrepreneurial vibe, my biggest, where I really got my start was I started a company. We did virtual tours. We grew the company very, very well. But on the side, I've always done these little fun side projects because I enjoy it. And that's where I can make some of my biggest money.
Hey, John, in the domain world, what was your biggest home run, just out of curiosity?
My biggest home run. Usually my biggest home runs were acquiring domains. Like I own a do.com, I own calendar.com, I've owned organize.com, I've owned several other big .com domains and selling some of them. I've been involved in other big .com domains too. For example, there was one that went public in the past year. I was part of that domain acquisition sale. I've been part of other ones. So, over time, been like 20 or 30 probably good ones and 3 or 4 like really good ones. But really for me, it wasn't about like a massive, I made $10 million on this domain. It was, I bought a domain for $300 and I sold it for $800. And then I took that 800 and I sold for like 5,000. And I find that my biggest wins are not in the $1 million because $1 million like domain sales and business sales are very hard and it takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find really good deals for the $500 to $800 range and sell them for the $5,000 to $10,000 range, which for me, I can do a lot more of those and it's a lot less risk.
Sure.
This is blowing my mind. I know somebody out there is wondering, they want to go back maybe just one step, because they're going, okay, buying domains, you're buying a web address. So you basically go on like GoDaddy and you bought calendar.com, right? You bought the domain and then you just hold it. Do you go out and market it? Did you just hold the domain? Tell us about that.
Usually I hold them or I sell them. So, and I usually don't buy them on GoDaddy. I'll usually buy them on sites like Flippa or Cedo or other websites. Flippa, Flippa, is a website where you can buy and sell domains, websites, or online assets.
Wow.
And that was a very, that's a place that I always am looking for good deals because there's a lot of people who just, want to get money for something, or they're having a hardship. They lost their job and they have this website that they just want to sell. And if I have the money, I can buy it and then I can build it up, use my online expertise because that's what I'm really good at is online marketing. So I build up my online expertise, build up some of the revenue and then flip it and sell it.
When did you figure out, or when did you feel like you were gaining traction and not just having random wins here or there? I mean, when did you feel like, okay, this is something I can do to support myself consistently? Or have you ever even had that thought?
I haven't ever really had that thought necessarily. I guess my biggest thought was when I had graduated from college and I was 23 years old. I graduated and I went and worked for a company, and I was working at that company and it was a job, just like any other job, right? I was working there day in, day out, going in, going out. And then I was like, hey, I want to start doing more of this. So I was doing the domain sales and a few other things, but I started doing more of those and more and getting better at it and being known in the industry, as well as doing other fun side projects and this and that, all of it was on the side. And it got to a point where I was making the exact same money inside work as I was outside of work. That's when I went to my boss and I said, hey, I want to start coming into work earlier. I was working 9 to 5 and I said, hey, can I come in earlier? And he's like, oh, sure. What time? He was thinking probably like 8. I was like, no, I want to come in at 5 because I can get most of my work done and then work on fun things or build myself up online or do things that help the company, but really help myself. So it ended up that I started leaving work around 1:30, 2 o'clock every single day. Now that added like 3 or 4 more hours during the business day where I could do things. I did that for a complete year to the point where I was making 3 times what I was at work. outside of work. And
Wow.
that's when things really started taking off.
And where do you call home now? Where's your home office? Where do you run your empire from?
I have a couple different offices. So I have offices for different companies that I run. I have offices in San Francisco area. I have offices in LA area, kind of the Santa Monica. I have office in Salt Lake City, Utah. I have an office in Columbia, Missouri, and another office in Pune, India.
And you are a guy, if people Google search you, I mean, you do a lot of ongoing writing now for Forbes. You do articles for Inc. You do articles for a lot of different publications. How would you classify yourself now? Did you consider yourself a marketing expert, an author, all of the above? How do you describe yourself? When people say, what do you do for a living? How do you describe that?
I mean, I focus on typically one project at a time. I'll do little side things, but it's one major focus at a time. So I always say I'm an entrepreneur. I have several different preneurs, but I'm focusing on right now calendar.com. It's a productivity app that basically takes 100% of my focus.
Calendar.com is the main thing. And do you have a large team of people working with you, or do you like to keep it kind of lean? Or tell us about the workings, the inner workings of Calendar.com.
Calendar is a smaller team. We're like around 20 people.
Okay.
So to some, that's a big team. To others, that's a really small team. We have a lean and mean team, and we're building up something that I think is pretty cool. So I like keeping smaller teams. I think the scrappier a team is, the faster you move, the better you are, especially in the short term.
What problems does Calendar.com solve for people that check it out? I mean, does it help you with your schedule management, obviously, or is it time management? Or tell us how Calendar.com is maybe different than a default calendar that somebody could get from a different online provider.
Yeah. Calendar is basically a calendar app. We want to put all your we know that you have 5 or 6 different calendars. We want to help you prioritize the things that are important in your life. So you can have all your calendars in one place. It'll give you analytics on how you're spending your time, what you're doing. We always say, oh, you are the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with, or, show me your calendar and I'll show you what's important. With calendar, I can show you what's important in your life, what takes priority. Does your spouse take priority, or your loved one take priority, or do your business people take priority? Do you actually block out time for things that are important to you or not? Calendar helps you analyze this with both yourself and your teams. It also helps you like scheduling meetings and booking this and booking that. But, our ultimate goal is to make you a better person.
John, how long have you been working on calendar.com?
About a year and a half.
And when do you see it as complete? I mean, do you typically take a project, being a serial entrepreneur like you are, do you take a project all the way and then you sell it, or you cash out at some point and then you start looking for the next, or do you overlap them at all?
More overlap them. I think I enjoy certain parts of a business. I like taking businesses to, from 0 to 30 or $50 million in revenue. And after that, it's not as enjoyable to me. There are also people that are much better at that job than myself.
Now, you were named by Entrepreneur Magazine as the #2 online influencer. What the crud is an influencer online?
Oh, wow. That's a good question there.
What hot? You got the silver medal in what event?
This just in.
I got the silver medal at, a self-proclaimed thing. I think, just, hey, I'm the coolest. No, I think they just, they went by some metric like Twitter followers, influence, retweets, this, that. Like, I think influencer is, in almost every sense of the word, is garbage. I think influencer from the perspective of, if people help other people and people listen to them and are willing to purchase or make a decision based on, what information is given, that would be an influencer. You could be an influencer to one person, and that's the biggest influence of your life. I see a lot of influencers who are like, these huge rap stars who have 100 million followers on Twitter, and they're getting, 10,000 people to like their tweets and people call them an influencer. But if you take the exact same portions and you say a person that has 100 followers and gets 80 tweets or retweets, would you consider them more of an influencer than the other guy? Probably not, but to that crowd they are.
Interesting. Okay.
I know Wes Carter has some questions for you, but I have two rapid fire digital marketing questions. You are an online marketing expert. Where do most entrepreneurs get it wrong with their online marketing? But by default, when you sit down and you talk to a guy, maybe it's a friend, a colleague, somebody at a speaking event, and they're having a conversation and they're asking you about their marketing, where do you typically see entrepreneurs getting their online marketing wrong by default?
I think most entrepreneurs are getting wrong at tracking. They basically are saying, oh, we're working on all these things, but they're not actually tracking what's going on, what's actually being successful. And when I determine success, I personally determine success by revenue and profit. Because if you're building something and it does not have profit, at some point it will no longer work.
So you judge the success of a venture or a thing based on the revenue and the profit.
Correct.
And you feel like that a lot of people by default are judging the success based on the followers, the likes, or what kind of wrong, incorrect metrics?
Yeah, I mean, followers, likes, people to their website, time on site. Oh, we have 100 million people that are using our product, but the product loses $40 million a month.
Right. Yeah, that's no bueno.
That is, at the same time, if it's helping other metrics, like you can't just judge, that book by its cover. I mean, think of like Venmo. Do you guys love Venmo?
I do not like Venmo. Don't dislike Venmo. I'm neutral to Venmo.
Okay, I love Venmo. It's great, but it's a free service. It has probably 100 million users, right? But it probably loses $4 to $10 million a month.
What?
Like it loses that much money.
That's not good. Hey, John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying but it helps PayPal's business grow in other aspects and Braintree. So it's not necessarily a failed venture and it's getting in with all the millennials. But at some point in every business, they have to analyze and say, is it making money or not? And if it's not, they will end up cutting it at some point.
And that's $4 to $10 million of tax write-off.
Yeah.
Hey,
and
John,
that's their investors all of a sudden are like, hey, that's $50 million. That's an extra $3,000 a month in my pocket every single month versus $3,000 out of my pocket.
Yeah, you could almost make the claim, though, it's kind of a marketing budget because it helps build something that is very profitable. So I guess.
Yes. That one I was saying it's not necessarily good or bad. But many Silicon Valley companies are raising $50 million, $100 million, and they're just blowing all this money, and they look at that as success. I don't look at that as success.
John, do you know who Entrepreneur Magazine named the #1 online influencer?
I don't know. Some jerk. I don't know. No, it was Neil Patel.
Okay, so do you want us to, just between us, just don't tell anybody this. You want me to Tanya Harding him, get a baseball bat, take out his leg or something, or a hand, I guess, an online influencer.
I cannot confirm nor deny. You're looking at the live video, right? I'm winking.
I receive your wink, but I will not acknowledge it. Okay, there we go. All right.
I really do. I want Westfield to ask you some questions here. I love this, though, because I can't tell you how many times I have met with, you see this a lot in the banking industry. You see this a lot in the insurance industry, where you'll see an insurance agent, or usually it's a district manager, someone who's the regional manager, and they are obsessed with getting Facebook likes, especially in insurance. And they go, Z, we've got 10,000 likes, and we need to get to 21,000 likes by the end of the quarter. And then I just, whenever I've been hired by insurance companies in the past to help them, I will ask the question, who goes on Facebook and reads the Facebook posts of an insurance company,
Right.
of a top 5 insurance company, who goes up there and reads the tips? And the tips, by the way, are fabulous.
I personally dedicate 2 hours a day, 2 hours and 15 minutes to be precise a day to just insurance companies.
And I see this, and it'll be like 5 tips for lowering your rates. And it's like, step 1, drive slower.
Don't be
Step
an idiot.
2, don't. Yeah, and it's like, okay, great. That is great, but no one's reading it. There's no profits. I love the idea that, hey, you have thousands of followers and likes. Well, so what? The real question is, are you profitable? Are you profitable? I love that. That is powerful. Wes Carter, what questions do you have for the number 2, influencer in the world, social influencer in the world, according to Entrepreneur Magazine, but a guy that we believe to be number 1?
Well, I'm curious. You got into the domains early, and now you're developing an online platform with calendar.com. Have you got much into the app space? I'm hearing more people from business clients saying, I need my own app. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are versus online versus app, what that looks like as we go forward.
I mean, it depends on your business. If you have a messaging app, nobody's messaging on desktop. Nobody's messaging on a native platform. They're messaging on apps. So I think apps are really good for certain businesses, and they're not useful at all for other businesses. Like an insurance company isn't putting out an app to get new customers. They're putting out an app to retain customers and make their customers happy and keep up with the Joneses.
So it's a value-added kind of a service, not a marketing tool.
Yeah, but then again, some people, it is a marketing tool. They're like, WhatsApp would not exist today, and I don't even think they have an online portal. They just have a mobile app portal. So, that's a tough question to answer based on, who you're talking to. I think apps are great. I think they do have limited functionality. I think also the world in a whole will be moving over a lot more to, this is just my prediction, over the next 20 years, people will start, like, mobile usage on your phone right now. The average American spends 3 hours and 15 minutes on a phone a day. The average teenager spends 7 hours and 19 minutes on their phone a day. I think there's going to be regulation that comes in that limits the amount of time a person can spend on things. And there was even one Stanford professor that came out and said, basically your social status in the future will be how little time you spend on your phone, not how much.
The pendulum swings both ways.
It does. It does.
It always does.
So and again, now that you have on your iPhone, it has screen time. Like every time you look at that, you're like, crap. I'm up 8% over last week. What am I doing wrong? And all of us have this goal of moving it down and down and down. So if you're investing tens of millions of dollars in apps, I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I am saying I think the trend in the future will be to use less and less apps.
That's why I think we all should go back to the flip phone. That razor, that real thin razor. Remember that was that was the cool. If you had a razor when it came out, you were like, you pulled out of your pocket, flipped that thing open, it was wow.
Can I nerd out for a second? I have, I didn't know we were going to take this conversation in this direction, but I have been working on a book called Trade Ups that I have a lot of research here in front of me about what he just said. Lady Gaga, the pop singer, she said here, the quote is, "There's something in the way that we are now with our cell phones, and people are not looking at each other. And not being in the moment with each other, and that kids feel isolated." Ryan Tedder, the Grammy Award-winning songwriter, he says we're in these places now where he wrote an entire song about "Can I Get a Connection?" He says if there's so many people out here, why am I so lonely? Vera Wang says, "I hate phones. All businesses are personal businesses, and I always try my best to get back to people. But sometimes the barrage of calls is so enormous that if I just answered calls all day, nothing else would get done." Sam Smith, this is the funniest story. Sam Smith, the music artist, was sitting on a subway with a guy who was blaring one of his songs super loud. So Sam tries to engage in a conversation with the guy like, hey, how's it going? Because Sam Smith is sitting next to a guy who's listening to Sam Smith so loud he can hear. Sam Smith can hear that Sam Smith is playing in this guy's ear. And the guy shrugs him off. And Sam's quote was, I was once sitting on a tube, that's British for subway, and someone was playing my song so loudly through their earphones next to me. I just stayed silent and chuckled to myself. Because he tried to get the guy's attention. Now, Justin Rosenstein, who invented the like button, he went on to say, this is what's crazy. This is from an article in The Guardian. He went out and purchased a new iPhone and instructed his assistant to set up a parental control to prevent him from downloading any apps. And he's concerned about the psychological effects on the phone because his research showed the average person taps their phone and looks at it 2,617 times a day. They glance at it to see if they're missing an update. And so you start to see enough people saying this, you start to see some patterns. And we just interviewed the head, the lady, the professor at Yale, who Laura Santos, who has the #1 class in the world right now. 50,000 people are in her class, or 50,000 people are on the online version of her class, with 500,000 people trying to get in on like a waiting list. And the #1 thing this class is about is how to deal with this digital dystopia. And what they're finding is that your smartphone usage is directly now linked to your likelihood of committing suicide. So people who are killing themselves, they're going back and looking at these high school kids' phones, and they're going, this kid was on the phone all the time being cyberbullied. Stanford came out with this is a fun fact, and this is all linked on the show notes today. Stanford says, researchers have known that the amygdala, a pair of almond-sized bundles of nerve fibers in the middle of the brain that helps process emotion, memory, and fear, are involved in anxiety disorders. And they go on to explain, when you look at your phone, you have an anxiety disorder if you look at it 2,600 times a day. So I think what you just said is spot on. I mean, have you gone off the deep end and researched this to this next level, or is this just anecdotal from your work in the tech industry? I just want to get your take. I mean, where are you getting some of your predictions from?
No, I mean, so I have a little bit more background on this. I invested in a company called Gab Wireless. Gab Wireless is a cell phone for kids. Basically, it's a smartphone with no smart functionality. It's a smartphone that just allows text messaging and calling and no picture messages. And you can add picture messages once a child turns a certain age or things like that. But they strip everything else. So I know a lot of this data. It's the data on the 3+ hours is by The Guardian, and those 7 hours and 20 minutes, I believe, 18 minutes is directly from Fox, who did a huge, big research. They researched 200,000 teenagers and found that was the average time on phone. Versus on Gab phone, the average kid spends around 14 minutes a day.
Yeah, because you can only play Snake for so long. I mean, it's just, it's fun for the first time or two.
They don't even have Snake on there.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
It does have the cell phone functionality and the text message functionality, sure. But it looks like a smartphone, so it takes away all that, a kid with a flip phone gets made fun of. And
True. That's powerful. I want to interject something. It's funny, and I think it's a nice segue here. The University of Michigan School of Public Health. There's a woman who works up there. She's an assistant professor. Her name is Emily Martin. And Emily Martin thought, you know what? I'm going to do some research. And this article is this research you can find in Time magazine on time.com. Look for the phrase cell phone bacteria. This is what her research found. Your phone, now again, she researched many, many phones just at random. Your cell phone is 10 times dirtier than a toilet seat. She researched the average toilet seat and the average phone, and it's 10 times dirtier because of the crazy stuff that people do while on the phone. So that's maybe another reason. If you're not just grossed out by how distracted you are.
I would hate to be the research test subject on that
one. Carl, we got a problem with your phone here. I mean, that is so. Let's talk about this here. The listeners out there love to research ongoing projects of our guests. You're obviously working on calendar.com. Is there one action step that you would encourage all of our listeners to take today that might allow them to learn more about you and what you're up to?
I mean, obviously you can go sign up for calendar.com. It's just how it sounds, calendar.com. But my biggest takeaway from this would be know how you're spending your time. Know if it's productive or not productive. Know who you're spending it with, what you're spending it on. Really start evaluating in 2020, 2021, 2022, the future coming years. Evaluate what's going on in your life, what's important, and really prioritize the things that are important. We say certain things are important, but then we don't do them. Start doing them this year.
Wow.
Good work.
Okay, let's talk about this real quick. You're a proactive guy. How do you organize the first 4 hours of a typical day? Like, what are the first 4 hours of your days? What do they look like?
So I wake up and I try and exercise, especially right now being, earlier in the year. We have these diet and fitness goals and, all these competitions that people sign up. So obviously the first, I would say it takes me, usually I get out of bed, I sit and read kind of news. It kind of wakes me up, energizes me. I then go work out for a little bit. I then go to the office, and usually the first 2 hours, I try and get to the office before anybody else. I like that because nobody else is there to bug you or talk with you or do anything. And I find in the first 2 hours of work, I can get almost my day's work done.
That's powerful.
So that's how I spend the first 4 hours of every single day.
That's powerful.
Is literally, I get the workout in, the gym in, and I get in all the work for the day. Because after, when people start coming in, meetings start happening, unproductive, it's not productive. It doesn't help you become a better person, or a better work, or better this or better that. It's mainly unproductive. It does need to happen. So not saying it's just unproductive, because it does need to happen. But as for actual productivity, most of it happens for me in the mornings.
John, is there a book or a couple of books that you'd recommend for all the listeners? Well, our listeners love to devour books. Do you have a certain book that's made an impact on you, or a couple of them you'd recommend for our listeners?
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a very good book for me. It basically taught me that I don't have to go buy a multi-million-dollar project or house to make money. You can apply it in many different verticals, and it will help you. Another book that I really liked is Never Split the Difference. It's by Chris Voss. It is all about negotiation and how you shouldn't split the difference on anything. If two people are splitting the difference, it means both people are not getting a good deal.
We actually interviewed Chris Voss. So we had a Sharon Lecter, who co-wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She did, I think, 6 shows with us.
Oh,
and
nice.
Chris Voss, I think, made the wiser choice and agreed just to do one, Z. So we tricked them both into being on the show.
Dan, thank you very much.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it.
I was going to say one other book is Can't Hurt Me. That was another really good one.
Who wrote Can't Hurt Me?
That's David Goggins. And I think that he's one crazy SOB, and you should take it with a light heart. But the guy went from 290 pounds to 190 pounds in I think it was 30 days.
What?
And became a Navy SEAL because he couldn't get into the SEALs unless you weighed 100 pounds or less.
I can vouch for this story.
Maybe it was 3 months.
Through
it was 3 months.
Yeah.
His Scribe Media. He elected to self-publish his book. David Goggins did, and it went on to become a New York Times bestseller. Thus, he made a lot of money. And the guy who published the book, his name is J.T. McCormick, and we just interviewed him last Monday on the show. And he explained the story. And they also at Scribe Media, they also represent Tiffany Haddish. And Wes, your law firm represents people in ministry who are writing books and getting big book deals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of explain just in general concepts so people get this? When somebody publishes a book and they self-publish it versus getting a traditional book deal, what are the major differences? Because David Goggins did decide to go ahead and self-publish that book.
Well, the old school way is you would talk a publisher into picking up your book, and then they would usually give you an advance. How big of an advance would depend on obviously your popularity and how, what kind of demands you had. And then they would front the cost to publish, edit, print copies, market. and they would recoup their advance, and after they recoup their advance, pay you a royalty for every copy after
Got
that.
it.
Self-publishing is, straight self-publishing is where you are arranging for the cover art, the editing, you're printing copies of the book, and then every copy you sell above cost, you're keeping all of the margin. Now, there are hybrids out there a lot, but those are the two, extremes as far as self-publishing versus traditional publishers. And I'll add, at least in our experience, even huge, successful, established authors now are taking the self-publishing route and cutting the middleman out of it, because there's so many tools available today to print on demand. You don't have to warehouse books like you used to get help with, cover art and all these other things that you need to put a book together.
And you can keep a lot more per book too, right? I mean, when typically if you self-publish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
A lot more.
You can print books even in color now for, a few bucks. And if you're selling a book even for $15.99, I mean, that's a big margin, much better than a 10 or 15% royalty.
David Goggins has sold over 900,000 copies of his book.
Yeah, I mean, that's
impressive. John,
I impressive. No, Scribe's great.
It's a great
Tucker's
company.
really great. Zach's really great. Good dudes.
I appreciate you for taking the time out of your schedule, because I know you use the calendar.com program there, so you know where you're investing your time, and I know you're very thoughtful and intentional about spending that time. So again, thank you for doing that, my friend. And I know that the award doesn't mean a lot to you, or being named as the number 2 most influential online marketer guy, but may you finish first or fourth next year, whatever you prefer.
50th, it'd be fine. If I can help a couple people by coming on things like this, it doesn't matter to me. So,
awesome. Well, John, I hope
There
you
you
have a
go.
great rest of your evening, my friend.
you as well. Thanks, guys.
Take
You
care.
bet. Well done, John.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!
There have always been people who don't believe. They don't believe in hard work. They don't believe in responsibility. Ultimately, they don't believe in themselves. They believe in shortcuts, in luck. They believe that outside circumstances control who succeeds and who doesn't. It's just the luck of the draw. But you are not one of these people. You believe that no matter what your circumstances tell you, success is still possible. And you accept this responsibility because you want to achieve something great. You're hungry for it. You chase it from the moment your eyes open in the early morning. You chase it into all hours of the night when others have given up, when others have said that it couldn't be done. You've kept pushing because you believe that success is not a game of chance. Success is a choice that you make every single day. That's what you believe.
Discover the world's most affordable and effective business school today at thrivetimeshow.com.